Plugin of the week comes from Leapwing. StageOne 2. This is an update to their StageOne plugin. If you are familiar with it, it looks like this, or if you're not familiar with it, it looks like this: width, depth, mono spread, and center gravity. Output control. You get all of those same controls in the new plugin, except it's multi-band. So now you have 3 bands to work with, 2 crossover points. You could take all of those settings and do the same, except applied within the different frequency bands, or all together if you link them together. We'll get into that. And they've added in a new feature called phase recovery, which allows you to take mixes or individual sounds that perhaps are over-processed with phase spreading, and allow you to sort of bring them back in or collapse them a bit to make them perhaps a bit more usable. I run into this problem quite often now where a lot of people are using immersive processing in synth sounds and things like that. I tend to keep it a bit more on just the effect so that you don't lose mono compatibility. So let's break it down here from the top, going through all the settings. We have a bypass control up here, all the usual A/B, comparison, undo, redo, and presets, little information if you want to check for updates and things like that. Get to the manual, all that sort of stuff. Settings, width control, right? So again, you could do it multi-band. You could turn it all on or off here, as each section gives you the option to do. The width control will either make it less or make it more, so you can narrow it. What the width control does is it only processes information that's not center. So if you have it panned outside of the center, phantom center, it will widen that information but leave the center information alone. The depth control adds reflections to the sound. So what you're doing here is just a pure mix control. You raise the level up and it will add in the reflections. Again, you could do it multi-band or full band. And what that's doing is it's adding depth of field. So what you're doing is you're setting a stage that allows you to help lift the music out of the speakers. So I'll demonstrate that as well. A very, very cool feature. There are not a lot of things that do it, and I like the way that this is designed, so we'll focus in on that. The phase recovery, so what this is doing is it's recovering, and you can do it within the different frequency or all across all of them if you link all the bands together. What it will do is it will correct phase differences between information in the left and the right-hand side. So it's more than just like a 180 phase flip. It will actually phase match and pull sounds to center. And I'll show you a classic example of a sound I have that's like a synth sound that is a bit too wide or wide in a way that I don't want it to be. And this gives me the ability to kind of put it back together and make it usable. So I'll show you that. Mono spread. So the opposite of the width control, what this does is it focuses only on center panned information. So anything in the center, phantom center, will now be divided up and split out to the side. So how that's exactly done, they say that when you adjust the setting, it changes the length of the filter. So I guess that would be the length of the filter within each of the individual sections. I'm not sure exactly what that means, so they don't tell you the process. Usually it's some version of splitting up frequency information to the sides, a little phase shifting here and there to sort of, make it move out a little bit more, something along those lines. Sounds good. That's what and I'll show you a good example of where we can use that. Center gravity is something that's probably akin to somewhere between a balance control or a center pan control. And I'm not exactly sure which one it is. They don't give a lot of information specifically about that. But essentially, if your center image is slightly off to the left or to the right or something along those lines, it'll give you the ability to sort of rebalance it. So probably more like a balance control. Again, this can also work where sounds are sort of disconnected a little bit and allowing you to move something that maybe into different frequency zones sort of shifts. Doesn't mean sort of an equanimity in the center. It would give you the ability to compensate and adjust for that. Output control here. The link button just links the settings. So if I make an adjustment here, it'll happen across all bands. Otherwise, they will work individually of each other. Okay. All right. So let's get to some audio examples. So I'm going to start with a full mix, and I'll go to a couple individual sounds just to show you the phase recovery. option, and also doing one example of a bit of an upmix. So let's start with the mix. And what I really wanted to focus on initially here was the depth feature, just to show you the staging feature, and hence the name. And we'll dig into that a little bit. So first, let's listen, and I'll start to bring in the effect. Oh, one other thing. Sorry, the phase display in the middle here, the dark blue dots in there will be the original information. The light blue, or what they call ice blue, will show you what the width processing is doing to it. Sometimes it's all jumbled together, just depends what you're doing. Sometimes you can see a real discrete difference. The little dots just show you how much information and specifically where it is in the pan field. Okay. And frequency is vertical. Right.
You know I wait, I'm standing in place. You kick it with her, you know I'm for ya. But you can't deny me when you close your eyes. Being alone, this time is on ya. Seeing the sun fading away. Hope you know this ride can only go so far. The way you looking, I didn't notice till then. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more when you're talking. I just know you're clowning. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more. You're trying, you lost me, thinking that you could leave me, losing all the lies that you tell. The one who you're chasing, she ain't bad like me. Don't believe the lies that you tell.
Right. So you could see how that opens up like the depth field, how it sort of draws the back end of the mix farther back and allows everything to just sort of pull forward a little bit. Very cool tool. Very cool tool. I love the way that it sounds. Also, the fact that it's multiband allows you to take this off. So if I now take it off link, I can now kind of work with this a little bit and make some adjustments. Maybe I don't want as much depth because it starts to sound a little fluttery in the high end.
You know I wait, I'm standing in place. You kick it with her, you know I'm for ya. But you can't deny me when you close your eyes. Being alone, this time is on ya. Seeing the sun fading away. Hope you know this ride can only go so far. The way you looking, I didn't notice till then. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more when you're talking. I just know you're clowning. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more. You're trying, you lost me, thinking that you could leave me, losing all the lies that you tell. The one who you're chasing, she ain't bad like me. Don't believe the lies that you tell. You make me feel loved, like I'm your best of. I feel so in touch, but without your boy.
Right, so you can hear how it really opens up the depth field. I can pull it back on the depth or the amount, adding in the high frequency zone. And again, I can just sort of shift this wherever I want to. So I could put it way up in the spectrum. And what that does is just kind of taking away a little bit of the flutteriness if that's occurring with the reflections up in the higher frequencies. So I could balance it off. And also, I love this on the low end because it allows you to just sort of open up the sound field. Now, because it's reflections, it's not really adding any phase-related information that's going to affect the collapsing back to mono. If you find that as you check to mono, then, you could always go to, some phase recovery or, adjust the width in that end or, just some other form of balance there to sort of make that stick together a little bit better. Still, very cool. I use variations of this in mastering and mix work quite a lot. So this is like a very handy tool because it actually allows me to do something with a singular tool. I sometimes need multiple tools to work with to make happen. The other thing I could do is I can work with this. So let's just take, like another perspective on this. Sometimes just doing something simple like bringing a little air onto the top end of the mix by putting a little width processing, because there's not a lot of localization cues up on the top end, but I could sort of lift the top end a bit just by working with this spectrum. So let's play around with this a little bit.
You know I wait, I'm standing in place. You kick it with her, you know I'm for ya. But you can't deny me when you close your eyes. Being alone, this time is on ya. Seeing the sun fading away. Hope you know this ride can only go so far. The way you looking, I didn't notice till then. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more when you're talking. I just know you're clowning. Who you fooling? 'Cause I don't believe your lies no more. You're trying, you lost me, thinking that you could leave me, losing all the lies that you tell. The one who you chase and cheat ain't bad like me. Don't believe the lies that you tell.
So I can use this to sort of add a bit more size and depth on the low end, take the air frequencies up on the top and kind of widen them, and sort of lift the top end, drop the low end. Really powerful tool. There's just so many ways that you can use this. Just diving into all of the individual settings, and and particularly with the crossovers and everything, just sort of digging into it. So plenty more that you can focus on or get into there. I just wanted to show a couple of other things. One is just a simple up mix. So I have a guitar here. So this is going mono to stereo. So if I bypass it, I'll have mono. Right, so you could see it right there on the display, all mono. Now I can kind of work here with the spread. So let's just kind of work with the mono spread, taking some of this information because it already has all the effect built into it. Now I just want to lift it out here, draw it out, draw some of the energy out. Now that I've kind of drawn some of the information out, I can now go to some width processing here. Add a little depth in there to kind of move some of the effect a little back. And then, of course, I can work within the individual bands to kind of focus it. So it may be that, for example, I can take, let's see, the handle, this is only on the left. So maybe I can take primary frequencies where the guitar is operating, most of the notes. So let me just kind of pull it down in here a bit. And maybe, let's see, take the link off. And let's... Right, and just sort of, give it a little hourglass shape. But even if I just control that section or the frequency zone where the primary, notes of the guitar exist, I could give it a little bit more stability while creating more of the effect in and around it. That was just like a basic idea there. That's pretty straightforward. The opposite example is something like this, where I have a sound that is got a lot of phase processing on it. It actually doesn't have a lot of phase processing on. This is actually the natural effect of it on an organ. But let's say that I wanted to kind of mono this up or sort of collapse it a little bit. Not mono it, but collapse it a little bit. This is where I could use the phase recovery as a way to sort of bring it in line a little bit better. So you can hear how the sound now, sounds, more full, a little bit more better phase aligned. You still get the movement that's going around from the left to right, but it is doing a bit of phase correction in there. Really cool. And I've also found this to work with other synths that have a lot of width processing on them. A very cool tool, and it does so in a very clean way. It doesn't sound processed. It doesn't sound phasey or weird like it's doing in creating artifacts or other weird things. Really killer plugin. I really love this. It's like a very handy tool to have. Great for the mixing, particularly with the depth processing, and being able to move that multiband is huge, huge, huge. Such a huge step over the original version of StageOne. So there you have it. Plugin of the week from Leapwing. Check it out. Really cool one. StageOne version 2.